p.m. Eastern is your chance to get answers to all of your questions about the Catholic faith. Featuring priests from the Institute of Christ the King Sovereign Priest, the Priestly Fraternity of St. Peter, the Franciscan Friars of the Immaculate, and various dioceses around the United States. Again, that's Ask a Priest Live, weekdays at 6 p.m. Eastern on the Station of the Cross and the iCatholic Radio mobile app.
The Catholic Current, bringing Christ to the world and the world to Christ.
And we see the spirit of that thing, entering the church in a very specific way with St. Pius X back at the turn of the last century, and then on into the Second Vatican Council era. And the spirit of the council is the great coming out party of the modernist revolution, which has its roots in that same Enlightenment philosophy of the 18th century.
The Catholic Current, 5 p.m. Eastern, from the Station of the Cross and on the iCatholic Radio mobile app.
Hi, Joe McLean here, host of A Catholic Take, heard on the Station of the Cross each weekday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern. A bold synthesis of information and inspiration, keeping you up to date on the news and issues that you may have missed from a courageous Catholic perspective. That's A Catholic Take, weekday morning, 7 a.m. right here on the Station of the Cross and the free iCatholic Radio mobile app. Download it today. God love you.
Calling all pro-life men of goodwill, it's time to stand up. The next National Men's March to abolish abortion and rally for personhood is happening in Washington, D.C. on Saturday, June 7th from 11 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. There's a man behind every abortion, and men have the greatest responsibility to protect the most vulnerable. For too long, we've stood on the sidelines while innocent children are being mass murdered under the lie of abortion. It's time to demand equal protection under the 14th Amendment without compromise. Join us, 11 a.m. The march begins at Washington Surgery Clinic. 12:15 p.m. Rally for Personhood at Lafayette Park. Men, wear a suit, bring your sons, women, children, and families. Join us at the rally. Visit themensmarch.com for all the details. That's themensmarch.com. This is the moment. It's time.
The Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network presents Saints and Seasons. On May 23rd, we celebrate the feast of St. William of Perth, Martyr. William was born in Perth, Scotland, in the 12th century. His was a wild and misspent youth, but as he matured, he had a conversion of heart and devoted himself to God. He was a baker, and for love of God, he gave to the poor every 10th loaf he baked. One morning, at the church he attended daily, William discovered an abandoned infant left on the doorstep. He adopted the boy, naming him David, and raised him as his own. Several years later, probably in the year of our Lord 1201, William and David set off on pilgrimage to the Holy Land. His foster son, however, turned out to be truly ungrateful and greedy, and near the English city of Rochester, David struck his adoptive father over the head, cut his throat, and disappeared with their money. William's body was discovered by a local madwoman, who made a crown of flowers and placed it first on William's head, then on her own. She was immediately cured of her madness, and thanks to this miracle, William's body was interred in the local cathedral in Rochester, where many miracles continued to take place at what became his shrine. William of Rochester, as he is also known, is considered a martyr for having died while on pilgrimage, as well as a patron of adopted children. Also honored on this day are St. Desiderius, St. Michael of Senada, St. Giovanni Battista Rossi, St. Euphrosine of Polotsk, and many other martyrs, confessors, and holy virgins. For more about the saints and seasons of the Catholic Church, visit thestationofthecross.com/saints and seasons.
This is Joe McLean, and you're listening to the Station of the Cross, proclaiming the fullness of the truth with clarity and charity.
Heard around the world on your Android and Apple mobile devices.
Go into the world and tell every man that you meet, there is a man on the cross.
A Catholic Take. What you need to know right now. A bold synthesis of inspiration and information. Keeping you up to date on the news and issues from a courageous Catholic perspective.
A Catholic Take with Joe McLean starts now. Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Michael Hichborn, filling in for Joe McLean, who was carried away by giant bees while touring Captain Nemo's mysterious island. At 14 past the hour, I'll tell you about the latest report from the Lepanto Institute. At 30 past the hour, Dr. Anthony Stine from Return to Tradition joins us as usual on Fridays to catch up on Catholic news from the past week, including Pope Leo XIV's first Episcopal appointments. Remember, you can find links to everything we discuss on the program today at our landing page. Go to thestationofthecross.com/ACT. Before we get into all of that, however, let's begin with prayer. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thy intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, I fly unto thee, O Virgin of Virgins, my Mother. To thee do I come, before thee I stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not my petitions, but in thy mercy, hear and answer me. Amen. In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. And now, your saint of the day.
St. William of Perth, pray for us. William was born in Perth, Scotland, in the 12th century. His was a wild and misspent youth, but as he matured, he had a conversion of heart and devoted himself to God. He was a baker, and for love of God, he gave to the poor every 10th loaf he baked. One morning, at the church he attended daily, William discovered an abandoned infant left on the doorstep. He adopted the boy, naming him David, and raised him as his own. Several years later, probably in the year of our Lord 1201, William and David set off on pilgrimage to the Holy Land. His foster son, however, turned out to be truly ungrateful and greedy, and near the English city of Rochester, David struck his adoptive father over the head, cut his throat, and disappeared with their money. William's body was discovered by a local madwoman, who made a crown of flowers and placed it first on William's head, then on her own. She was immediately cured of her madness, and thanks to this miracle, William's body was interred in the local cathedral in Rochester, where many miracles continued to take place at what became his shrine. William of Rochester, as he is also known, is considered a martyr for having died while on pilgrimage, as well as a patron of adopted children. For more about this day and others in the Church's calendar, visit thestationofthecross.com/saints-and-seasons. St. William of Perth, pray for us.
And now, here are your headline news. Catholic News Agency reports, Oklahoma Catholic Charter School loses Supreme Court bid for state approval. The U.S. Supreme Court yesterday declined to issue a ruling in a contentious case involving what was proposed to be the nation's first religious charter school, leaving untouched a lower court ruling that forbids the Catholic institution from accessing state funds. The High Court said its judges had split evenly on whether or not to allow St. Isidore of Seville Catholic Virtual School to launch in the state of Oklahoma. The ruling leaves in place an Oklahoma Supreme Court order that said the school's use of public money would violate state and federal law. Justice Amy Coney Barrett had recused herself from the case for unknown reasons, though it was likely due to her ties to the University of Notre Dame. The school's Religious Liberty Clinic helped the Catholic Charter School in its bid before the Supreme Court. Just the News reports, GOP House passes Trump's Big Beautiful Bill. The GOP-led House yesterday passed President Trump's spending bill following an all-night debate that started at about midnight. The bill passed 215 to 214. Two Republicans voted against the bill, Representatives Tom Massey and Warren Davison, and another House Freedom Caucus Chairman Andy Harris voted present. We're going to get it to Trump's desk by Independence Day, July 4th, House Speaker Mike Johnson said yesterday regarding the budget bill. The spending and multi-trillion-dollar tax cut measure now goes to the Republican-controlled Senate, where changes are expected. Ground News reports U.S. and Iran to hold further nuclear talks. Indirect negotiations between Tehran and Washington are scheduled for today in Rome to address Iran's advancing nuclear program. The Iranian foreign minister emphasized that Iran will persist with its uranium-enriched efforts regardless of whether a new agreement is reached, underscoring a key obstacle in the negotiations. And those are your headline news. Today's gospel comes from the 15th chapter of John, verses 12 through 17. Jesus said to his disciples, "This is my commandment. Love one another as I love you. No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. I no longer call you slaves, because slaves do not know what his master is doing. I have called you friends because I have told you everything I have heard from my Father. It was not you who chose me, but I who chose you, and appointed you to go and bear fruit that will remain, so that whatever you ask of the Father in my name, he may give you. This I command you, love one another." The Gospel of the Lord. Laus tibi Christi. The commentary once again comes from Cornelius a Lapide. This is my commandment. This is to be referred partly to the words, "If ye keep my commandments," partly to "in my love," which is the scope of the whole parable from the beginning of the chapter to this place. The meaning, therefore, is, "I have commanded you to keep my precepts, among which know ye that the chief is this, that you love one another as I have loved you. Again, I have bidden you, abide in my love." In other words, continue and persevere in loving me. "And this ye will do if ye love one another, and bestow your kindness and offices of charity upon your neighbors. For ye can bestow nothing upon me, but whatsoever ye shall bestow upon them, I shall account as bestowed upon myself as the parent of all. Wherefore he calls this my commandment." This is an allusion to his words, "A new commandment I give unto you." For what he here calls my commandment, he there calls a new commandment. For he gives his precept to all Christians. For all were represented by the apostles. For Christ willed by the apostles and their successors to convert the whole world. He bids them, therefore, that out of love to him, they should love and seek the salvation of all nations, should expand all their faculties and labors upon that work, undergo all perils, sustain all persecutions, and lastly, should shed their blood for it. For so he loved them and all other men, that he gave his life and endured the death on the cross for them. Moreover, this precept, in the first place, concerned the apostles, because Christ by them was about to accomplish his own work of preaching throughout the whole world. Wherefore, it was the duty of everyone to cooperate with and assist every other. For this union and mutual cooperation of many was most efficacious for overcoming all difficulties and converting all nations, however barbarous. And so we see the same thing at the present day in religious orders and in religious and apostolic men united among themselves. Thus it is said, "A threefold cord is not quickly broken. Greater love hath no man." Christ here sets forth the manner and terminus of or extremity of his love wherewith he loves us, and of all that wherewith he wills that we should love one another. As though he said, "I have supremely loved you, therefore I require the same of you, and have a right to ask it, that ye should supremely love one another. For the highest and supreme love is that in which a man not only gives his substance, but his life, that is, freely offers and lays it down for his friends. This I do for you. In other words, I will presently lay down my life for you. Do you therefore in like manner give your lives for your friends and neighbors in such a manner that ye do not refuse, but welcome all labors, perils, persecutions, and every kind of torment and death for their salvation. You may say, it is greater charity if anyone lay down his life for his enemies than that he lay it down for his friends. Some reply to this by saying that the meaning is, there cannot be among men a greater love than to die for a friend, but mine is a greater love for you because I die for my enemies. To say for enemies was unnecessary, for it was never done among men. Whereas the friendship of Pylades and Orestes in being willing to die for one another is the theme of one man's praise as something exceedingly rare. We'll be back in just 2 minutes. Stay tuned, share us with a friend, and we'll see you on the other side of the break.
iCatholic Mobile is a proud sponsor of the Station of the Cross. Solid connections, reliable data. That's iCatholic Mobile, a 5G wireless provider dedicated to your faith and values. Enjoy unlimited talk and text, dependable coverage nationwide. And every plan has unlimited data and free roaming in Canada and Mexico. iCatholic Mobile, the service that connects you to what matters most. More info at iCatholicMobile.com.
Download the app to take our programming with you wherever you go. Hear what listeners are saying about the regularly updated iCatholic Radio app.
The programs on iCatholic Radio are uplifting, educational, and have served to deepen my faith as a Catholic. Thank you for this amazing station.
Download the free iCatholic Radio app in your Android or Apple store today. Please consider giving us a 5-star review or telling a friend about it.
Please join us in a prayer to our guardian angel. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. O holy guardian angel, take care of our soul and body. Enlighten our mind that we may know the Lord better and love him with all our heart. Help us in our prayers so that we may not give in to distractions. Assist us with your advice so that we may see the good and carry it out with generosity. Defend us from the insidious snares of the enemy and sustain us in temptations that we may always be victorious. Remedy our coldness in our worship of the Lord. Cease not to protect us until you have brought us into paradise, where we will praise our good God together for all eternity. Amen.
Welcome back to A Catholic Take. I'm your guest host, Michael Hichborn, subbing for Joe McLean, whose beekeeping skills are keeping him alive on Captain Nemo's mysterious island. I want to tell you about the latest report that we put out here at the Lepanto Institute. It's a very disturbing report, and it's deeply upsetting, but it's also one of the most important reports that we've ever put out. And the reason I say that is because we were contacted back in February by a priest who belongs to a Benedictine monastery out in New Mexico, and he was telling us that he had been, harassed, abused, medically abused. There was all sorts of financial problems going on at this monastery, and so we got this email, and immediately I put my team to work, and I said, okay, let's start looking into this. Let's figure out what's going on and see if there's actually a story here. And very quickly, not only did we find out that there was absolutely a story, but our research team received hundreds of pages of documentation alleging abuse So here's, I'm just going to read you portions of this report because it's really long. I mean, just typed in single spaced, I think it came to 28 pages. So it's a very in-depth report, and it has a lot of issues related to it. But the write-up here, the summary of allegations and everything that we have here is sufficient. So I want to read to you portions of what we have. Benedictine monks in New Mexico have accused their abbot of homosexual predation, sexual harassment, sexual grooming, medical neglect, elder abuse, retribution, abuse of power, and financial malfeasance. Several monks of the Monastery of Christ in the Desert near Santa Fe have alleged in official complaints filed with the Vatican's Dicastery for Consecrated Life in Rome that Abbot Christian Lazy, who was elected as the abbot in 2018, is guilty of numerous counts of sexual abuse and abuse of power, several instances of which could result in criminal charges. These allegations made in sworn affidavits. So we actually have all of the affidavits, which means that if they were lying in these sworn affidavits, it's perjury. They would go to prison. Were sent to the Lepanto Institute by friends of the victims after Rome sat on the case for several years. Whistleblowers hope that media attention will break the pattern of ecclesiastical cover-up and help secure justice for the victims of Abbot Christian's abuse. Several of the monks intend to seek civil recourse and protection after having been apparently stonewalled by ecclesiastical authorities, both within the Benedictine order and inside the Vatican. We obtained at the Lepanto Institute copies of signed and notarized written affidavits, as well as hundreds of pages of documentation that were also submitted to the ecclesiastical authorities. And we also have firsthand oral testimony from many members of Christ in the Desert Abbey, both current and former monks, corroborating the allegations included in this report. So what this says, we didn't just acquire the affidavits and then publish them as if, okay, well, that's good enough for us. We investigated, we talked to these various monks who were making these allegations, and through the course of their testimonies, and this is part of the precept of what was established by David when David was, I think it was David, first. He established kind of the precedent for how to conduct an interrogation. You separate the people making the allegations, you talk to them, you ask questions, and you see how well their stories line up. Well, in talking to each of these individual separate monks, we found that their testimonies not only lined up, but the additional information that came from each gave us a more complete picture, and it's pretty devastating what we found. So here's a summary of allegations. Monks in the desert, or monks of Christ in the Desert Abbey, have accused Abbot Christian of sexual abuse of persons under his authority in the form of homosexual predation, sexual harassment, and sexual grooming. They've also accused him of abuse of power in the form of retribution against those who have confronted him and brought the matter to ecclesiastical authorities. Finally, they have accused him of medical neglect towards sick and elderly members of the community, and that one was so egregious, as well as financial malfeasance in the form of withholding financial support for monks in need of urgent medical care. So under the heading of sexual abuse, we have this. We gave a little brief right up here. It says, it is both a civil and canonical crime for one in spiritual authority to sexually abuse subordinates, and the allegations against Abbot Christian in this regard are indeed grave. Separate testimonies from various members of the monastery corroborate the allegations, indicating consistency in the claims, which are serious and deeply depraved. What is alleged is that Abbot Christian, quote, abused his office by engaging in sexual actions with vulnerable adults under his charge as abbot. Among the testimonies from these monks, testimonies formally submitted to Rome and provided provided in full below are the following. And these are some of the, just a few of what we found. And I don't know how clear I can be. Let's just say he exposed himself to a subordinate monk, enticed him to discuss fantasies, plied him with suggestive gifts. So I'm being very couched with my terms. I hope you get my meaning. And he pleasured himself over the phone, of which there is a recording. He psychologically manipulated another subordinate monk, gave him, made him discuss homosexual video stuff. You can figure out what that means. Self-pleasure, and made the monk give him a nude massage. I don't want to really get into too many of these. It's pretty gross. But there are several instances of this consistently told by various different monks about what was going on. One witnessed, this was actually witnessed by several monks. So corroborated evidence coming from various witnesses saying that he was found in a condition of undress with junior monks, and he was observed grooming novice and junior monks. So this is a very deeply serious problem. But then on top of that, he abused his power. So canon law says no one is permitted to harm illegitimately the good reputation which a person possesses, nor to injure the right of any person to protect his or her own privacy. But what Abbot Christian did, or is alleged to have done, in this regard, anytime he was countermanded or confronted about what he had been doing, he would then either dismiss the monk or put him under a very strict rule, and then tell others basically lies about what the confronting monk was doing or had said. Here are a few examples. He told other members of the community that one of the monks was a sexual offender and a thief after the monk confronted him over his grooming of novices and juniors. Abbot Christian called a seminary in the Archdiocese of New York to claim that a monk training to become a priest there was sexually suspect and had no vocation, and this resulted in the monk's expulsion. He also dismissed a monk from the monastic life via email while he was visiting family in Kenya because the monk stood up to him in defense of his brothers. Additionally, Abbot Christian denounced this monk to the superior, to his superior out there in Kenya. So here he is abusing his authority, and he's spreading malicious lies about those under his care simply because they stood up against his abuse. But here's where, I mean, this was heartbreaking. This was really hard to read. The sexual abuse is awful. The lies and the manipulations are terrible. But one of the worst things was this. One of the things that was told to us is that he actually expelled an 80-year-old monk from their community. He expelled him after he was diagnosed with a brain tumor and left him to die a few weeks later in a homeless shelter. We were also told that Abbot Christian refused to extend the medical leave of absence against the recommendation of medical professionals of a monk who had been sexually assaulted, resulting in his PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. Abbot Christian also refused living expenses and medical payments for a monk recently diagnosed with cancer. Payments were also refused for canonical representation needed to appeal for said medical and living expenses. He also refused a monk to be treated for a broken foot after being stepped on by a horse on abbey grounds, and this resulted in the monk having a lame foot. So these are the things that we discovered. These are the things that we put into our report. And then, we also provided a lot of the testimony, not nearly all of it, because as I said, we have 500 pages of documented evidence against Abbot Christian. And this report is only 28 pages long. So you can do the math and see that this is only a fraction of everything that we discovered. But We have vos estis complaints, which are formal complaints that are submitted to Rome, explaining to Rome the abuse of power and the sexual abuse that he was engaging in. And one of the things that I can tell you now is that after writing this up and publishing the report on what we discovered, we did send this information over to the Attorney General of New Mexico. So that is now sitting on his office or sitting on his desk in his office. I am also told that it actually reached his hands. So I don't know what this will result in or how this is going to play out. But the bottom line is that, you know, there's a serious problem of sexual predation going on in not just this monastery, but there are others. And we do know that over the last 12 years, there have been multiple reports from various monasteries, various other places of worship and you know, where people are set aside and they work and pray and for the good of the church. And Rome has refused to hear the cases. We know that Rupnik, who was accused of horrible things against various nuns and sisters, I think actually to the level of satanic abuse, and Rome protected him. Pope Francis protected him and wouldn't actually conduct a case or even investigate what happened. They just put him in a different position and kept him in Rome and wouldn't do anything. So we're going to continue praying for these individuals. We'll continue to stay on top of these reports and letting you know exactly what's going on, because these kinds of things are going to be very important. When we come back, we're going to have Dr. Anthony Stine with us after this break. Please share us with a friend. Stay tuned for more from A Catholic Take in just 2 minutes.
Join the Station of the Cross every Saturday morning at 9 after the 8 a.m. Holy Mass and Sunday afternoons at 2 for a teaching episode on the Catechism of the Catholic Church. You'll learn the essential and fundamental content of our Catholic faith and morals in a complete and concise way with clarity and charity. That's Saturday mornings at 9 and Sunday afternoons at 2 here on the Station of the Cross, Catholic Media Network, and the free iCatholic Radio mobile app.
At the Station of the Cross, we understand that life circumstances can affect your giving options, whether by moving or by switching banks and credit card numbers. Please let us know if recent changes have been made to your payment information so that we can better serve you as you continue to bless us with your financial support. Update your information today at thestationofthecross.com or by calling 1-877-888-6279, extension 104.
Here at the Station of the Cross, we proudly bring the truths of the Catholic faith to countless listeners through radio and mobile devices, and we're grateful for the feedback we've received.
I'm a widower, parent of 3 almost adults, and listen to you guys around the clock. Father McTigg, Society of Jesus, he's wonderful. Mother Miriam, of course, the Divine Office, and many other great things that the Station of the Cross does. So thanks very much for your great work.
I had a friend at work email me and tell me about the Station of the Cross a couple months after it started, and I was so excited. I tuned into it, and I found that I love the Catholic Station.
If you've been blessed by listening to the Station of the Cross, let us know. Call 1-877-888-6279, extension 112, then share your testimonial with us.
Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your guest host, Michael Hichborn, filling in for Joe McLean, who is hoping to steal the Nautilus and escape the mysterious island. Here are your headline news. The Pillar reports 4 German bishops opt out of national synodal body. 4 German bishops have confirmed that they will not take up their seats in the new synodal body, scheduled to be launched in 2026 and include all 27 German diocesan bishops. The 4 bishops' absence will likely undermine efforts to present the future body as fully representative of the Catholic Church in Germany. The 4 bishops are seen as belonging to a conservative minority that opposes synodal way resolutions calling for significant changes to Catholic teaching and practice. The Hill reports, Treasury Department details plans to end penny production. The Treasury Department said yesterday it's planning to end production of the penny. The U.S. Mint has made its final order of penny banks and will stop manufacturing the coin. Congress has sole authority over the discontinuation or elimination of coins. However, the Treasury Department has the power to halt new production. The penny costs nearly 4 cents to make. By ending penny production, the Mint projects an annual savings of $56 million in reduced material costs. The Blaze reports, Supreme Court sides with Trump on firing of officials. The U.S. Supreme Court temporarily granted a motion from the Trump administration to allow the firing of 2 federal officials who said they were improperly terminated. The court voted 6-3 in favor of the Trump administration, with liberal justices Kagan, Sotomayor, and Jackson in dissent. The case also touches on the larger debate over how much power the executive has over agencies set up to be independent by Congress. Because the Constitution vests the executive power in the president, the ruling said, he may remove without cause executive officers who exercise that power on his behalf, subject to narrow exceptions recognized by our precedents. And those are your headline news. Joining us now is Dr. Anthony Stine, who joins the show every Friday to catch up on Catholic news from the past week. Check out Return to Tradition on YouTube or visit returntotradition.org. Anthony Stine, Dr. Stine, welcome back to the program. Looks like we have some Episcopal appointments being made by our new pontiff. Why don't you tell us what you see going on here?
Most of them are, I think overall, you could call a mixed bag, really. Mm-hmm. There's the initial one that gave people a sense of hope. I called it the low-hanging fruit one, where the head of the John Paul II Pontifical Academy for Life, who I can't even remember his name. You remember the man's name? He was he basically was putting, abortion lovers and all sorts of other wicked people on the Pontifical Academy for Life in Rome, much to the consternation of anybody with a vaguely Catholic conscience. He hit age 80 and was replaced by somebody who has, we'll just call them more normal Catholic views about these things. That was, I call, the low-hanging fruit one. Good. It was definitely good news. But then yesterday's Episcopal appointments and yesterday's appointments more broadly to the one that got the most attention was another woman put in charge of the Congregation for Religious Life. So you have 2 women now governing priests, basically. And that's an inversion of the natural order of things, as you would find any pope saying over the last, century or more on the subject. Mm-hmm. But also St. Gallen got a new bishop, someone who is young and fully on board with the new synodal church and all the rest of it. So there's a lot of less than stellar appointments coming out of Rome right now.
What are your thoughts? So it was Cardinal Reina who was appointed to the Pontifical Academy for Life, which, was heralded as a great appointment. And I tend to agree with that. I think that Cardinal Reina is going to be very good, and certainly an upgrade over Paglia, who was there before. So there's a new bishop in San Diego, and I don't know much about this particular bishop. What are your impressions? What do you think of this new bishop in San Diego?
I haven't seen much about him, but the first thing I noticed is that he wears Pope Francis's pectoral cross, and I've not heard too many good things about the bishops who typically wear that. It's because it's a signal. In the same way that the Holy Father wearing the pectoral cross or a reproduction of one, I don't know if it's the actual one or a reproduction, but of the pectoral cross of Leo XIII was supposed to be a signal also. And wearing one that has the actual relics of St. Augustine and his mother in them are supposed to be seen as a signal. Any bishop who wears the pectoral cross of Pope Francis is sending a very clear signal, and the new bishop of San Diego is as well. I want to remind people that right after the election last year, there was a meeting in Rome between Cardinal McElroy, Cardinal Supich, and I believe Tobin. They had a meeting with Pope Francis, and what was discussed was the state of the church in the United States, specifically all the vacancies needing to be filled. And it was at that meeting, apparently, that Cardinal Supich was chosen to be the Cardinal Archbishop of Washington, D.C. But it's San Diego we're talking about, where Cardinal McElroy came from. And so these were all probably discussed at that meeting. They would had to have been. And one of the things that some of us noted at the time was, if such a meeting happened, then you're going to see all the vacancies and the quasi-vacancies filled. When I say quasi-vacancies, because you have a lot of bishops who have reached the point of retirement, who had submitted their letters as they should, Supich being one, where they will probably be replaced. And I would expect some of the more, we'll call them more, those who still have vitality in them, maybe to stay on for a while, because who would replace Supich? I mean, we could throw some nightmare names out for you if you want, but he could be given a job in Rome also, as a sort of a nice sort of capstone to his ecclesiastical career, especially since he is, by all reports, one of the men who put Leo XIV on the throne of Peter. He was one of the ones who organized that with Cardinal Dolan, who is also, by the way, retirement age. Yeah. They have these very high-profile sees that are going to be vacant very soon. And so some expect men like, Bishop Robert Barron to get a promotion to somewhere, to go from being a normal bishop to an archbishop somewhere, possibly, I don't know, Los Angeles or some place. Well, some people thought San Diego, although that'd be not a promotion so much. But there are places available for a lot of these fairly well-known regular bishops to get promoted. And there are going to be men in the pipeline who will be filled. So you're going to see the USCCB get remade in the next year, most likely. And that's just in the US. There's also similar stories out of France. There's a real opportunity, I think, to remake the church in Germany, because it desperately needs it. But
especially given the news on the German synodal way, I tend to agree with you. Only 4 out of those bishops are saying, you know what, we don't really want to participate in this.
That's a red flag. Germany,
a huge red flag, absolutely. So, in looking at these Episcopal appointments, obviously we have the not just the appointments of bishops, but now we have a nun appointed by Pope Francis, who's in charge of the dicastery for consecrated life, and Pope Leo XIV now put another nun directly under her. So now you've got 2 women who are in charge of the basically the organization that's making decisions regarding consecrated life and evaluating various situations regarding consecrated life brought to their attention, such as this case that we just put out yesterday about what's going on in Christ in the Desert Monastery. These kinds of things are going to be going to that specific dicastery. So I don't know. St. Paul says that women are not supposed to have authority over men. So I have very serious issues with this, just on the idea of putting women in charge here. But what are we supposed to take away from this?
I think these things should be looked at in light of a document called Cor Orans. If you're familiar with that document, the document that fundamentally restructured how specifically women religious are organized in the church. They put religious congregations together with like-minded groups under one Congress. So Benedictines together, That makes sense on paper until you realize that every religious order you can name has its more contemporary expression and its traditionalist expression and everything in between. And so you're having, pantsuit wearing activist nuns being in the same organization with a small minority of contemplative or cloistered religious and trying to come up with rules to govern them. And it always results in the more conservative the group, the more harmed they are by these congregations. And then we're talking here about the dicastery in Rome. It has to be working with the bishops when talking about reining in traditionalist nuns. So when you get like these stories of nuns suddenly having apostolic visitations, when what were they guilty of? Well, it turned out that they liked the traditional mass too much. They were dedicated to the pre-conciliar order of things consistently, or maybe not even that. They identified a little too much with their founders and foundresses and the charisms and their order of life that they had handed down to them since time immemorial, even if they wore contemporary habits, because, they wore habits at all. That's usually a red flag. Or they had the bad taste to believe that they should take ora et labora seriously instead of, getting on a bus somewhere to lecture people about politics. And you start seeing this, and what always ends up happening is their property gets seized. And this is we're talking the dicastery that's going to be at least involved in this process. Mm-hmm. And when you read the woman, this was a woman in question. I posted it because I talked about this in my live stream this morning. She had a document that she wrote in seminary or something. I mean, she went to seminary. There's another thing, but on governance in the church, on the governance in the church for religious orders. And it reads like something you would see out of a parks department somewhere, talking about, working with the employees and making everybody, feel good and all this other stuff, kind of couched in Catholic language. But when you strip it down, it sounds like a secular document. And that is the crux of the problem. So this is not exactly the most awe-inspiring choice. But then again, I'm the guy who thinks that, Father Isaac Marie Relia or somebody should be put in charge of one of these organizations rather than people who want to put in synodality.
Yeah. Well, and doesn't that seem to reflect the idea of synodality, that they want to make everything much more democratic so that, and I mean, one of the things that I know about the cloisters that, specifically the Carmelites, is that each Carmel is supposed to be its own charism. That each one, I mean, it carries with it the charism of the order of the Carmelites, but each one is kind of it's supposed to be somewhat insular, that it's its own governance, its own fiefdom, and they're not supposed to be part of some sort of federation, and it violates their very founding idea to say, you know what, we want you to be a part of a federation of other Carmels and make sure that all of you are on board and have kind of a democratic approach to the way this federation of Carmels is going to operate. I mean, that's it seems to be a violation of the founding constitution. Yeah, and it's in covering these stories for the last several years to the point where it's almost impossible to keep the various religious houses separate from that got suppressed by Rome or their local bishop. It seems that the Carmelites are the ones who keep being the ones that are brought up, probably because of their independent nature. In that way, they are relatively independent of each other. I say relatively because they are Catholic in communion with Rome and all the rest of it. But they are explicitly independent in their charism. And that might explain why they keep coming up among any other group in these discussions. We'll be right back with more from Dr. Anthony Stine after this short break. We'd be obliged if you'd share us with a friend today. Stay tuned. We'll be right back in just 2 minutes.
Hello, this is Father Jim Netto with the Diocese of Portland, Maine. In Krakow, Poland on the 2nd of June, 1938, the Lord Jesus himself directed a young Polish Sister of Mercy on a 3-day retreat. Sister Faustina painstakingly recorded Christ's instructions in her diary, that is, a mystical manual on prayer and divine mercy. These instructions became Faustina's weapon in fighting the good fight. Jesus began, "My daughter, I want to teach you about spiritual warfare." Secret number 11, observe the rule as faithfully as you can. In this secret, Jesus is referring to the rule of a religious order. Most of us have made some vow before God in the church. For example, marriage vows or baptismal vows, and we should be faithful to our promises. Satan tempts to infidelity, lawlessness, and disobedience. Fidelity is a weapon of victory. God has given us the strength of free will, fortified in the blood of his Son. Neither the devil nor any other creature can control this free will, because it is ours given to us by God. By our own choice, then, we can hold it or let go of it as we please. It is a spiritual weapon, and if we place it in the hands of the devil, it right away becomes a knife that he will use to stab and kill us. On the other hand, if we remain faithful, and if we do not place the knife that is your will into the hands of the devil, you will never be injured by the guilt of sin in any temptation. Lord Jesus, you overcame temptations and vanquished the devil. Because of your victory, we too can conquer in the power of your Spirit.
Welcome back to A Catholic Take. I'm your guest host, Michael Hichborn. Support for this program comes from iCatholic Mobile, a wireless phone service for individuals and families that provides support to Catholic media, including the Station of the Cross Media Network. More information is available at iCatholicMobile.com. So here we are with Dr. Anthony Stine. We're continuing our conversation on Episcopal appointments coming from our new pontiff. We had already discussed maybe a little bit about the new bishop of San Diego, of which there is very little information, aside from the fact that he's wearing the pectoral cross or a duplicate of the pectoral cross that we would see from Pope Francis. And we were also talking about the appointment regarding the nun, the sister in the dicastery for consecrated life. We have to wonder now what kind of appointments we might expect to replace some of those cardinals and bishops that are up for retirement. We mentioned Supich is up for retirement. We mentioned that Dolan is up for retirement. So what are your expectations? I mean, I know what I'm hoping for, but I'm not so sure that we're going to see a hope realized. What should we be expecting with regard to these replacements?
I think it's with the amount of times the Holy Father has spoken about synodality and all the rest of those things, that you will see new bishops who are on board with that program. And they may come from, I would say, the acceptable to them range of the Episcopal spectrum. So I think Bishop Robert Barron will be one of the more orthodox ones who gets a promotion in the near future. That would shock me if he didn't. There has been no scandals out of his diocese. That's usually a good sign for someone's promotion. He's also extraordinarily popular and probably the most media savvy bishop in the United States at this time. So the chances of him not getting promoted are small. But synodality is, they're going all in. At this point here, we're now, 2 weeks? It's pretty clear that they've gone all in on synodality. You've seen this with the ecumenical meetings in Rome. Some Buddhists were given an eloquent address about how wonderful synodality is and how ecumenical dialogue is part and parcel of synodality. So if you're as tired of the term synodality as I am, don't worry, there's a lot more of that coming. Might as well get used to it.
You know, one of the things that has troubled a lot of Catholics over the years regarding this synod on synodality is that there really is no definition of what that means. It's amazing how we've had so much dialogue about the notion of synodality, but no one seems to be able to pin down exactly what is meant by that. One thing that I do know about Pope Leo the 14th is that he is a man of definitions. He likes to define terms, whereas Pope Francis did not. Pope Francis didn't want to be pigeonholed. He didn't want to be held to a certain standard. So he kept things as open-ended and as loosey-goosey as he possibly could. But Pope Leo the 14th, from all accounts, is an intellectual who likes to define terms, who likes to keep things not rigid, but he likes to be clear and likes to explain things. Do you think that maybe we will finally get a definition of synodality out of Pope Leo the 14th, and that from that definition, maybe he could curtail some of the broader-ended notions of synodality? Keeping in line with, we're in line with Pope Francis because we're doing synodality, but we're going to define it so that it's not exactly what everybody expected it to be 4 years ago.
I fully expect that. And it'll probably be in his first encyclical. And as you know, popes don't usually wait very long to publish their first encyclical. So I would expect before the end of summer, whatever his encyclical will be, and it will probably involve it'd probably be a social teaching focused thing, but you can easily bring synodality into a Catholic social teaching encyclical. So I would expect that by the end of summer. I'd be surprised if he made it to the 4th of July without that encyclical. If he's writing himself, which he strikes me as the kind of man who would write his own encyclical, since he has a pretty, it's not a huge body of writing, but everything about being an Augustinian who's very careful with his words suggests to me that he would write it himself instead of trusting someone like, Cardinal Fernandez to write it. As for Episcopal appointments, I would hope that we see Fernandez replaced soon, but if he's not, there will be your biggest sign that we are on the track that we've been on, and we will continue on that track. But when it comes to a definition of synodality, it's desperately needed. And it could very well be a fairly moderate-looking one that will shackle the German bishops or force them to make their decision to submit or go into schism. But it could also be something a little more, people say he is not a man of using ambiguous language, but if you look now at some of the things he has said in his addresses, there is some ambiguity there too, because that is part and parcel of the post-conciliar era. The period after Vatican II to today is a period of weaponized ambiguity, as numerous of commentators have pointed out, that you read the documents and you can read whatever you want to in them. I would hope that comes to an end, but we'll see. There's now a cardinal running around out there claiming that this is going to be a period where doctrinal ambiguity will come to an end and we'll have clarity. We'll see. We shall see. Yeah. That hasn't been the case 60 years now.
No, I agree with you. It's been a problem. But I think that obviously Pope Leo the 14th has only been in office for a couple of weeks. He hasn't really had a whole lot of time. And in his general addresses, he does speak very generally when he uses certain terms. Almost as if the terms have a given meaning or a given definition. But, his statements with regard to environmentalism from a couple of days ago, you see stuff like that and you read it and you say, okay, I understand that you're talking to a general audience and you're not speaking with specificity on these matters, but it is important to use deliberate and specific language, especially since many Catholics have been confused by these matters for the last 12 years and even longer with regard to other broader issues coming out of, as you point out, coming out of the post-conciliar church. So my hope is certainly that we'll see a more defined approach to the teachings, especially the social teachings of the church, rather than allowing things to fester in a more general sense. I don't know whether that's a founded hope. What do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
I think in general, my hopes in general now are very tempered. I fear we are entering a period where a lot of Catholics who are otherwise awake to things will be offered fewer restrictions on a traditional liturgy and will take it in exchange for silence. That's my fear. And, well, it's based in part on some high-profile voices refusing to engage with things going on and chastising everybody else for to it, or just completely having done a total 180 on things. People are noticing it too. I'm seeing it in my own comment section and in my videos. They're like, why is this person not saying anything? Now, I don't comment and name names specifically, but it's not hard to figure out that something is going on with this.
Mm-hmm.
And the appointments this week aren't helpful in that. And I'm not actually confident that we're going to be given fewer restrictions on the Latin Mass as a general thing. But we'll see. We shall see, because again, Cardinal Go, who is the one saying that we'll get doctrinal clarity, is suggesting that will be the case, that there will be some restrictions lifted on the Latin Mass. We'll see, and we'll see how people react to it.
We shall see indeed. I do hope, I think that we have a reasonable hope that we'll have some doctrinal clarity, even if we don't have a lot of, I guess we'll just find out. But that's all for today on the radio side. Join us on YouTube, Facebook, Rumble, X, or our website to hang out with us in the after show. Otherwise, we'll see you next Tuesday when Mike Conager will be the guest hosting for Joe and talking to Jason Jones. Have a happy Memorial Day weekend, and God bless you.
So what did you think of today's show? Let's discuss that right now in the after show. Your take on the after take. Comment, interact live with me and the team. All you need to do is search for one of our live video feeds on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, LinkedIn, and elsewhere. Simply search for the Station of the Cross, Joe McClain, or A Catholic Take. I'm looking forward to seeing you and interacting with you directly. It all starts right now. It's the after show.
And we're back. Welcome to the after show, everyone. Happy Friday. And we can continue with our conversation here as soon as I give some shout-outs to the Telegram insiders, including Joe, who's chiming in bright and early. Let's see. We've got, of course, James 16897 from Romania. Good morning to you. Damon, good morning. Some beautiful pictures here from, I think this is from Anna Pierman, of the University of San Diego campus, with a church, really gorgeous church, gorgeous chapel. Joe was chiming in with pictures from I think that's still at the Parthenon. I'm not sure. He's climbing all over Greek ruins and going on big ferries and stuff like that. It looks pretty exciting. Paul also saying good morning. Tato's there. Good morning to you. Let's see. Paul's complaining about the weather, which which I understand. It's been kind of chilly this week.
I've been
not very
loving
not very springy. I know you are. You hate the humidity, but it's been like chilly and wet. It's been raining. Not the most pleasant.
I'm very happy that the stormy weather here in Oklahoma is mostly past. We're about to enter a little bit more of it this weekend, but it's nothing like what happened in southern Oklahoma this week. This last Monday, where about 8 hours, communities down there just had like severe thunderstorm after severe thunderstorm hitting them, with a few tornadoes too. It was just nuts. Watch the weather radar.
I know the tornadoes.
And that's what's supposed to be hitting the Oklahoma City metro area.
Yeah, the tornadoes that hit Missouri, I know, were pretty damaging. And was it St. Louis, where St. Louis had some kind of DEI lady in charge of the tornado sirens, and they were busy having like a lunch meeting, and everyone was too unfit to get down the street in time to hit the siren warning. Like crazy, absolutely crazy. Oh man,
why don't they have apps from mobile devices that the city officials have access to, where they can turn them on
at the very least, right? If you're not going to be on call, you should at least have some kind of remote ability. Like someone needs to be there,
right?
Joe's sending pictures of the ferry, and Sharon says to Joe, "If you're trying to refute Michael Hichborn telling us that you've been taken to Captain Nemo's island, we're not buying it." He's got pictures of. I'm assuming this is the ferry over to Patmos. That's my guess.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe not. It might be. They might be making multiple stops. I'm not sure. But and then Damon went ahead and airbrushed some giant bees in behind Joe. So that's pretty good.
Yes. That's awesome.
Lots of folks hanging out with us on the other video streams as well, Facebook and Rumble, YouTube. Good morning to everyone. Yes, just a reminder that we are off on Monday for Memorial Day, so look for us on Tuesday. We'll have an encore episode on Monday morning. But so I wanted to bring this up because there were a few people wondering about the Swiss bishop appointment. Do either of you want to take a crack at explaining kind of the interesting situation there?
Yes.
Like it's not as easy as the Pope saying, "Yeah, let's put this guy in charge." It's a very old arrangement. Yeah, it's one of these. And it's almost a hearkening back to some of the way that medieval places did it, where they the people would just acclaim someone a bishop, and then
yeah,
we're back
and what the
before things were
Germans want to
structured.
do.
Yes, and the Germans want to do this.
The Germans probably got their idea for letting lay people involved in the process from what's going on in Switzerland, because the priests voted for him.
Yeah.
And then the lay people had their own process for providing input, but the Pope gets the final say.
Okay. So the Pope can turn it down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But
it was rarely done.
Clearly didn't hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When was the last time that the Pope did, say no to, this situation? That's it's
I'd imagine I would imagine if someone took, I don't know, again, Father Isaac Marie Relia in a community and named him their bishop, and submitted to Rome, they'd be like, don't think so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's an interesting situation, but it says maybe a little less than you might think, but
yeah. So it's again. The Pope isn't actually choosing anybody except to confirm what is handed to him. He's given maybe a couple of options, but it really doesn't get much beyond that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in theory, he could just appoint a bishop there.
Yeah, sure. Well, he can do what he wants, but it's an arrangement it's a long-standing arrangement that goes back to the 1800s. So.
Yeah, and I'm by the way, I like that none of us are really going, ooh, St. Gallen,
Yeah.
because that diocese needs a bishop just like every other diocese, no matter what kind of horrifying history the place has.
Yeah,
but that place has always been the hotbed for progressive stuff, at least in the last century or so. It's been a hotbed of modernism, and I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Yeah, true. Yeah, is there a particular reason for that? Did they just pick a spot that was helpful? Did they have a sympathetic bishop there? Like, what's the history of them actually meeting there?
From what I gather, St. Gallen, Switzerland is a hotbed of Freemasonry.
Yep. Oh, interesting.
Yep.
So I don't think that's a coincidence.
No, not at all.
And there were Marxist seminaries that were set up in St. Gallen as well, specifically for the training of communist priests. So
fascinating. Yeah. Yeah, I'm wondering if there's any like why it started there, or why, if there's any particular reason why it is a hotbed of Freemasonry, or what's kind of the founding reason. I always like looking back and seeing if this was just something that happened to happen, or if there was some more symbological reason for it,
I'd like
or
to know what the interplay was between the Calvinist authorities in Switzerland and the progressive bent of their bishops, like what kind of interplay that had, because Calvinists don't have the reputation of being progressives, except if you remember that revolution is that progressivism in any form, ecclesiastical or otherwise, is a revolutionary ideology, and the Reformation was a revolutionary ideology itself. And I don't know, Calvin is kind of the theological equivalent of Stalin or something when you look to see how he ran things and just how wacky his theology is.
He canceled Christmas.
The world turned upside down. That's what that song is about. The cancellation of Christmas.
Yeah.
For those who
a lot of the worst American Protestants are Calvinists.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's any
sitting on my desk.
The more that
I do want to lighten things up a bit, though. I got something in the mail. It was just something somebody mailed to me. No explanation. Had a return address. I wish I'd saved the envelope. You remember these things?
Oh
my gosh.
That was my reaction when I got this. Like, are you serious? Like, yeah, I got a chick track, like as if this is a serious argument.
Maybe
this is not a serious argument.
Maybe it's a little joke present because I think we brought up chick tracks on the after show with Joe once.
Maybe. I hope so, because I remember the last time I interacted with chick tracks was long before I was a Catholic, back in my misbegotten youth, spending entirely too much time playing D&D and things like that. No, D&D is not satanic. It's just a profound waste of time, which you could argue is diabolical in nature. Sure, you consume entirely too much Mountain Dew and junk food and waste time that could be spent doing other things like interacting with members of the opposite sex instead of rolling dice and pretending you're Conan the Barbarian.
Yeah.
But they had a hilarious one. Jack Chick had a hilarious one about D&D, and I got my hands on it back in those days, and I read it. I'm like, I have literally never been in a gaming group like this. What are you talking about? Or like, It was literally like secretly like satanic worship, and people would like, end themselves over their characters dying. And I'm like, really?
Yeah, exactly. I know a bunch on X. Several of the Catholics I follow are that's their hobby is tabletop gaming and stuff like that. And they and it's just it's literally just it's playing a board game. But
it's really all it is.
Yeah, that's part of I think that was part of the deliberate distortion of the quote unquote satanic panic, because by framing it as frumpy Midwestern Protestant moms who just hate kids listening to Iron Maiden or playing Dungeons and Dragons, by framing it as that, you kind of portray it as it was just all just a big moral huff about nothing, instead of people actually being concerned about actual Satanism and actual reports of satanic abuse and child abuse, like all these horrible things. You can wipe that all out as part of the satanic panic, part of being upset about Dungeons and Dragons.
Right, because like it made any sense whatsoever that a rock band would win its own financial base to kill itself, right?
Yeah, it's just nonsense. Yeah.
Like if you've ever watched interviews with any of those guys, they go strictly business mode very quickly to get the conversation going.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Because what they did was a business. So why would you destroy your own market base?
Yeah.
This is saying nothing about whether you approve of the music they make or not. It was just a really dumb argument.
Doesn't make sense.
It morphed in the 90s into giving Marilyn Manson and Rob Zombie all the free advertising those guys could have ever wanted.
Yes, exactly.
To make their album go multi-platinum.
It's giving attention to the shot jocks, basically.
Law enforcement will tell you in the 80s and 90s there was a very real problem of weird stuff happening in cemeteries at night and kids disappearing for things, and it was just rather convenient how all that got washed away with people screeching about a kid casting magic missile with a roll of a dice at an orc somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. It acted as a perfect cover up for all that.
When I was a kid back in the 80s, our parish was vandalized and broken into by Satanists who broke into the tabernacle. They stole the Eucharist, and our parish priest told us that he would find dead animals and weird symbols and melted black candles in the seminary or in the cemetery there right by the church. So that really happened, and these things really did take place. And with regard to the music, I got labeled, part of the satanic panic, the more modern iteration of that, because I was pointing out that WSOU, a radio station owned by the Archdiocese of Newark, was broadcasting death metal, which lyrics are literal prayers to demons.
Right. You're not talking about when you invoke death metal, you're not talking about Ozzy Osbourne or so you're talking about the guys who sound like the Cookie Monster barking and had their lyrics are extraordinarily violent stuff. The stuff that would give any normal person pause. The guys in those bands need therapy at the very least, right? You're not talking, oh no, a guy in a leather jacket, singing about breaking the law or whatever.
Exactly. That's the thing is they framed everything, as being, and again, if you really want to go back to analyzing music history and the rise of degeneracy, you can make great arguments for, the rock and roll culture and the breakdown of norms and all that sort of thing. You can make a good argument for that, but the biggest issue was portraying as satanic things that clearly were not, explicitly being, satanic or anti-Christian in that way, except by, side effect, which may or may not have been,
Right.
on purpose. Like those, if you wanted to make a good, again, the whole concept of it being a panic, a moral panic, like how dare the kids be listening to stuff as opposed to understanding. Of course, kids are listening to pop music and stuff. Let's analyze this. Let's take this seriously, type of thing. It got framed as this just freaking out over nothing when there were clearly things to be concerned about. And by taking it to absurdity, you removed any chance of taking it seriously.
Well, and then you get people like Lady Gaga, who's broadcasting music that sounds very popular and things like that. But if you watch her videos, holy smokes, those are actual satanic rituals.
Yeah, they've had a lot of rappers now have been doing that. They've been pushing the envelope with those portrayals, and it's everywhere. Everywhere.
That's because hip hop is going through a down phase right now. Like people have lost interest in rap largely.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll see it in their numbers. So a lot of these artists push the envelope. It's pretty cynical. It's sort of like, again, Marilyn Manson in the 90s.
Yeah.
Rock music going through kind of a weird phase at that time. And so he made his name by being as offensive as possible, knowing there were plenty of Protestants who would be happy to give him free advertising, which is exactly what happened. I know. I was there in the 90s in high school, his target demographic, when all that went down. And Marilyn Manson back then struck me as really corny.
Yeah.
Really, really corny.
I just found him disturbing.
I mean, he is. And I've heard stories about people who've met him who say, no, that there's something really off with that guy, like deeply troubling with him, which again, if you're running around out there calling yourself the Antichrist superstar, there probably is an issue.
Yeah.
Issue.
But again, this kind of goes into what you were saying, Michael, is that when you have like legitimate, serious concerns where a Catholic bishop is basically approving funding to a music station that is playing actual disturbing music, you're written off as just being another one of those satanic panic, nags and frumpy Midwestern moms, basically, who are upset about the evils of rock and roll or something. And again, that's because the portrayal of the satanic panic got taken to absurdity, where Dungeons and Dragons is actual occult rituals or stuff, and then so normal people write it off. It's like, okay, this is these people are freaking out over nothing, and it's a convenient way to write off actual concerns like bishops funding actual black metal station, type of stuff where there's actual disturbing lyrics.
My favorite example of this was when Alice Cooper, evangelical Christian, by the way, he's like Mr. Republican, in like Arizona, he was doing an interview with some rock magazine or rock video interviewing company or something, and he was asked about this stuff, and he said his favorite example of how fake it all is when most of these bands is, he was on tour. The guy's in his 70s and still tours, which is amazing, right? But he was on tour in Northern Europe, and he was in Norway touring, the home of black metal. And when you say black metal, we mean a lot of bands who, the first wave of those bands, some of these guys were burning churches down. Okay,
yeah, exactly.
When you're looking for the satanic, that's where you're looking for it, in the overt stuff. I actually think the most satanic music is top 40 radio since about 2005.
There's a good point to that.
Depraved. But he actually got approached by some of the black metal musicians. Like he was in a mall somewhere doing a meet and greet, and one of the more well-known musicians came in with his mother. And he's like, the guy was in his full like evil makeup and everything, and he's like, "Excuse me, Mr. Cooper, would you sign my mom's an autograph for my mother?" And he's like, "Wait, aren't you all about Satan? Like, why would you want to have to do with that guy?" Because again, he's actually evangelical Christian, which is even really funnier if you know anything about Alice Cooper. And it's a lot of it is just so fake in the most dangerous way possible, because these guys don't believe. The guys out there singing about how great Satan is don't believe, which makes them useful idiots. In a spiritual war. They're going to be in for a rude awakening if they don't change their ways. But then there's that story that you see anecdotally. I can't remember the name of this band, but they were started out as some like black metal band, and they wanted to blaspheme Catholicism perfectly, so they learned everything they could about the Catholic faith. Guess what ended up happening? They did that. They became Catholic.
Yeah.
They converted and made Catholic black metal, which I don't know how you do that, but whatever.
Yeah, that's what Frank Rangel is talking about. He's saying like that he grew up a metalhead. He still enjoys the energy of some of those of the earlier metal bands. And he mentions, this is something I was about to mention, is Black Sabbath. They took their, you hear their name and you think, oh, they're aping up, they're clearly evoking, the Black Mass, and they're doing something satanic. Like, they had no intention of doing that. They just thought it was a cool sounding name. Like they thought it
was a cool sounding name. But they also, I know the story about them a little bit.
Yeah.
They started out as like a blues rock band during the 60s.
Yeah.
And they admit they got into some dark stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And
they did get into some
when you get involved with that, sometimes you get a reality check. And they've said they got a reality check, a very big one. They've never given the details on. All they would be willing to do, all that ended up happening is later they put out albums where half of the songs were about all the substances all those bands were using in the 70s.
Yeah.
Right. But the other half of the songs were songs about how you shouldn't trust Satan. He's a liar and he will lead you to hell.
Exactly.
Which is kind of a weird thing, to the point where, again, I saw some documentary on this several years ago, and there was a Satanist, like a guy who was an actual self-described proud to be Satanist guy, who was spitting the most venomous stuff about that band, talking about how they were a Christian rock band and should be treated as such.
Yeah. 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 There's, I mean,
again, I laugh. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's. I've heard them. I've heard several quotes from members of the band talking about how, like, they were getting hearing accusations from America, again of them being satanic, and they're like, "What the heck is going on? What are you talking about?"
Like, talking about the band who refused to go on stage without giant crosses surrounding them at all times.
Yeah, yeah.
Like given to them by Christians in Europe, saying these will protect you.
Yeah,
because they were singing about some pretty dark stuff. Now, their use of certain kinds of drugs probably wasn't helping their cause or their credibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, it was the 60s and 70s when logic had gone out the window in the sexual revolution.
Oh, yeah.
And make no mistake, the marijuana revolution was part and parcel of that.
But that goes to your point about saying that at least since 2005, the most satanic stuff is the stuff that's on Top 40 radio. Like that is where the insidiousness comes from. It's the stuff that seeps into the popular music and not most of the the fringe stuff. Like,
I mean, Miley
you can
Cyrus
kind of
riding
see
around
more
a
clearly.
naked in a music video broadcast on television.
Yeah,
to
exactly.
give you a sign. It was weird when a couple years ago she came out and kind of washed her hands of that stuff and said, "Yeah, I wish I hadn't done that." Now, I don't know if she's improved much since then, because that's definitely not my cup of tea when it comes to modern pop music. Is not my thing, but it was a nice sign.
Look at Britney Spears now.
Yeah, look at how she's ended up. Well, that's any of these child stars or young stars, like,
but
they
I mean,
all
have you seen,
not to mention the trial involving the rapper. You should be careful talking about the rapper on trial right now, because our totally fair and totally free hosts on YouTube take zero tolerance to discussions of that. That's why if you watch videos on it, everyone is using cutesy nicknames for him that will make sure you understand who you're talking about.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the names involved in that are like all of the big music names right now, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And a president.
Mm-hmm.
Or former president.
Mama,
yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if you guys have been following what's been going on with Britney Spears, but if you look at some of her social media postings over the last month or so, and I only see this because people repost it or they send me stuff. And I mean, she gets on camera and I don't know if she's disturbed, if she's on drugs, or if she's having a psychological breakdown. I can't really tell. I'm not a professional in these areas, but there is something deeply, deeply wrong with that woman. If you just watch her body language, the things that she says, and she looks.
If you're familiar with,
how
she looks damaged. Like there's something deep spiritual or damage. And if you read about the things that Justin Bieber is alleged to have said happened to him involving that guy on trial, it would not shock me if in her formative years something happened with that too. Although he wasn't a known figure yet. I think he was like just putting out music himself as a burgeoning artist, so-called artist. Right. But he didn't invent this stuff. That Harvey guy in Hollywood was doing similar stuff. Although from what I've read about him, his stuff was more typical, just,
sleazy
take
producer.
advantage of the situation for his own, like, his own excitement compared to this other stuff. Like this stuff was like orders of magnitude worse.
Mm-hmm.
And that's saying something, right? But none of this is new. So I always laugh when I hear people talk about the golden age of Hollywood. You want to know when the golden age of Hollywood was? So the Catholic Church managed to put the clamps down on Hollywood for about 30 years with the production code.
Yep.
And they tried to break it every chance they got, and they finally succeeded during Vatican II, of course.
Yep.
That's when they managed to do it. Because the Catholic spirit to resist these things was broken.
Yep. Yeah, it was really just, it was preventing. I mean, if you look at early Hollywood before the Hays Code was implemented, there's some real, not even questionable, just outright, degenerate stuff that was coming out and being portrayed. And again, it was a brief clampdown that helped the worst stuff from bubbling up to the surface. Hollywood's always been degenerate.
The first lesbian kiss in film, I think, was Marlene Dietrich.
Oh yeah, I would not be surprised.
Was that like the 20s or something?
Early 30s.
Maybe early 30s, right before the code. Yeah,
before the production code came in.
Yeah, the production code I think was 33, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, and I think Hollywood had to give in because the Depression was happening.
Yeah, they were like,
they didn't have much choice.
That was Catholics could actually rally public pressure. Amazing.
Right. And then you had Father Peyton, who was going around with rosary rallies and getting all kinds of Hollywood support. In fact, I remember reading that Hollywood stars would ask him, "Hey, can I be on your program?" And he would say, "Okay, we'll put you on the program." The what was it? The Family Radio Hour. Father Peyton's program.
One of the things I find interesting from that period in Hollywood is when the production code was broken, certain actors stopped making films and went to TV, where there were much more stringent rules, right? And one of them is Danny Kaye. My wife loves Danny Kaye. Now, I'm not as huge fan, but I'm not going to, walk out of the room if a Danny Kaye movie is on if she's watching it. And he was apparently a pretty decent guy. And about the time all of a sudden that the code went away and Hollywood went nuts, like if you watch some of the so-called classic movies from like the late 60s until about the time Star Wars came out, Hollywood clearly was acting like a kid in a candy store without supervision once the production code went away.
Yep.
I remember watching Dirty Harry with my wife going, "Oh, this is going to have some violence, but whatever." And, oh boy, did that movie have a lot more in it than I was expecting.
Yeah.
Just because I was like, well, that, like Clint Eastwood in it. Well, what's it going to have in it? I mean, that guy's usually got pretty restrained in the stuff he's involved with. And I was wrong. I was definitely wrong and surprised by this. But you'll see this stuff where a lot of these actors suddenly go to TV.
Yep.
Because it took a long time for TV to get bad, really bad. And TV got bad with language before it got bad with anything else. It was, the Lord's name in vain. Suddenly, when did that start showing up on television? Was that in the late 80s, probably? Where,
Maybe
dramas on later at night, the cop dramas typically.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Like what were the? I mean, what were some of the watershed film series that kind of helped do that?
Probably the LA Law type shows. Whatever the first of those were.
Police procedurals,
yeah.
I want to say it was actually in the 90s.
Grittier tone. Think so? It was the 90s. That's probably right.
I think it was the 90s when they started to loosen up a little bit.
Because even, you had some of the shows like you had horror shows on in the 80s that were really grotesque. I mean, there was a TV series that I was like 11.
There was a Nightmare on Elm Street TV series and a Jason Voorhees one in the 80s.
And they were
Tales
gory.
from the Crypt was on HBO, and then it got like a sanitized version for TV. No, I remember that stuff. I joke with my wife. My mom let me see Jaws when I was 5, and it's the 50th anniversary of Jaws. Movie I think is one of the greatest ever made. It's going to be out in theaters in 4K this year. Maybe I should take our 3-year-old daughter. Family tradition going, and she just looks at me nuts. It's only PG.
My uncle likes telling the story of his parents letting him stay up with them to watch Alien on TV when it was broadcast on TV at the age of like 7 or something like that.
Oh my gosh.
Which is like the funniest thing is that like it wasn't just that they let him stay up, like they stayed up and watched it with him. They were like, "Oh yeah, that was good."
There was
the biggest thing about it is if you watch movies from the 80s like that, though, they're very quaint.
Well, it's really. I mean, aside from the fact that it's sci-fi and has an alien as a disturbing alien creature as the villain, like it's written kind of like a classic, slasher film, or even almost like a you could picture that same plot in a way, that same structure being done by even like an Alfred Hitchcock or something like that. Like it's a thriller. There's a bad guy trying to stalk down these people type of thing. It's just because it takes place in space that it's unique.
If you watch the remakes of these 80s slasher movies, by the way, which I don't recommend doing, they're way more extreme than the original versions were. There was a remake of Nightmare on Elm Street that came out back like in 2008 or something.
Yeah, terrible one. Terrible.
It was the horror movie fans universally agree the movie is terrible.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons it's terrible is because there was a lot hinted about Freddy Krueger in those original movies. Hinted at. Because Hollywood used to hint at things. They would never paint you a picture. Well, in that movie, they just paint you a picture. And so it's not subtle. And that's the reason people say it's terrible, which is fascinating, by the way. And if you watch the remake of the Jason series that came out around the same time, again, much more overtly violent. And we're talking about a Jason movie. You've seen those from the 80s. By 80 standards. Really violent.
Yes.
You watch the remake.
That's the entire point of them. The only point of those movies is to showcase violent kills. That's it.
Yeah. One of the worst things in the world right now is that there are certain movies from the 80s that I wanted to show my kids that I realized that I couldn't because I saw only the TV edited version and not the actual release. Back to the Future is one of those. In the 80s, I was like, "Oh, Back to the Future! This is a great movie."
Blasphemy in that movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. A lot of it.
This is my $1 billion idea, by the way. If there's any investors out there who have the know-how how to do this, contact me. We'll have a good conversation. And that is a Catholic run, even if it's quietly, doesn't wear it on its sleeve so much, but a company run by Catholics that offers the TV edits for movies and encourages the studios to make new movies with TV edits. And they still kind of do because airlines show movies and they do tend to sanitize them a touch. So it would be really nice if you could pay for a streaming service with the cooperation of the studios to respect their intellectual property rights. So you can go watch Back to the Future complete with the corny overdubs of all the bad things. If you remember TV edits of movies, the dialogue was really funny. And I know these still exist because before we unplugged from Disney Plus, because of just how bizarre that company has gotten, I showed my wife a movie from my childhood called Adventures in Babysitting. Did you ever see that movie? Yeah, that's a blast from the past. Horrible movie. It's one of those where when you watch it, you question the taste you had when you were a kid. But it was the Disney Plus had the TV edit of it on.
Did they really?
Which was weird.
Huh.
They did. It was weird for a lot of reasons, given the fact that the stuff Disney pushes in their own content. You'd wonder, why did you sanitize the language? But then again, Disney does a lot by promoting evil ideas without ever crossing like language boundaries. You ever notice, by the way, that in like the superhero movies don't usually go into blasphemy areas? You ever notice that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I appreciate that, but at the same time, they're evil propaganda for a whole lot of other reasons. But at least they're not taking the names of the war in vain. So I guess there's that.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's kind of, I don't know that it's fallen out, but it's
part of the broader fantasy genre. You ever notice the fantasy movies? Like fantasy is the safest if you're trying to avoid blasphemy. Right. When they've got just a whole bunch of made up deities that their guys are worshiping, if they're blaspheming anybody, they're made up deities, so who cares? Yeah. You're taking the name of the god of tankards and mice. And, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, they're praying to Kram.
Yeah.
Kram, do not.
To hell with you. Exactly.
Have you ever seen Conan the Barbarian, the musical?
Yes. That is that is very clever. It's a short YouTube video. But it's really good. Yeah. That is
fantastic.
Conan the Barbarian the musical is very funny, and there's like a little outtake at the end where the guy is having trouble distinguishing between doing a Kermit impression and doing an Arnold impression. He's like, they're too close. You have to. It's very difficult to.
I'm pulling this up for my future watching.
Yeah,
it's only 2 hours and 2 minutes and 59 seconds long.
Yeah, it's basically a music video, but it's summing up Conan the Barbarian in song, and it's pretty great. Yeah, it's pretty great. Everyone's talking about movies they enjoyed, but someone made a good point about how, if you rewatch anything and you've got the blinkers are off, you'll see the more subtle propaganda. Like forget the outright like allowing of blasphemy or allowing of explicit content. It's the subtle propaganda you'll notice from a lot of these wholesome shows that people remember. Like, oh, I wish we could go back to TV that was just good wholesome fun. Like insert show here from the 80s or 70s or even 60s. And it's like, no, there was propaganda in those too. The closest you can get to maybe not having that is maybe some of the 50s stuff. Maybe when there were really strict rules.
Maybe, but I like to remind people that sexual revolution didn't start in the 60s; it started in the 50s.
Started in the 50s, yeah. Like
really
the closest.
It started in the 20s and Depression and World War II
exactly, stuff like that. I'm thinking like maybe some of the rural themed TV shows, were probably the closest you can get to being wholesome. But
Newberry was full of that stuff.
Yeah, there's.
Andy Griffith too.
Andy Griffith, yeah, like Andy Griffith show. Like why does he have to be a widowed dad, with a kid? Like kind of just always portraying kind of odd, broken down family situations. Like it started even in the 50s, or like families that only have one kid. That sort of thing.
I mean, if you've even watched The Life of Riley was the original Married with Children.
Yeah.
The Life of Riley was all about this bumbling dad who was completely incompetent, getting his whole family into scrapes, and then the family would have to bail him out eventually. I mean, it was the same. It's the prototype of what became The Simpsons, what became Married with Children. It's just this bumbling dad who just can't do anything right. And that
was.
It's why like shows like Everybody Loves Raymond, which was helmed by Catholics, by the way. I don't know if you know that. Ray Romano and Patricia Heaton, both actually like traditionally minded Catholics. That show seems so wholesome by comparison to everything else on TV at the time.
Right.
Even though there were still some really questionable things there, but you almost wonder, knowing who made it, if it was like a commentary. Like there's a scene in Everybody Loves Raymond where Ray goes to confession for the first time in a long time. He's like, "Oh yeah, Father, I eat meat on Fridays and have like for a long time." The priest is like, "Oh, we don't do that anymore." That was face-to-face confession with the typical, baby boomer revolutionary priest.
Yeah.
And I watched that going, is this a commentary? Like a very like subtle commentary back in the 90s about how off the rails things had gotten? Because, that could be my own bias looking at it because, I don't pretend not to be biased, but when you see that stuff being commented on by Catholics in popular culture, you're like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like that movie, what was that movie about the diabolical possession? It came out last year or the year before?
Nefarious,
yes. You had the Father Rainbow Stole walking in to confront the demoniac, and what's his name? James Martin.
That's the name of the priest.
Yeah.
Was it the name of the priest? Or I think it was like slightly different. It was it was just different enough.
Right.
So it was clearly like they were portraying that type. Yeah, exactly. It was like legally distinct. Right. What's the Simpsons joke? Steven Spielberg's non-union Mexican equivalent or whatever. Get me Steven Spielberg. Oh, he's not available, sir. Well, get me his non-union Mexican equivalent.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Back when The Simpsons was good.
I think I've told this story before, but I know a priest who has told me that sometimes his little inside joke is to try and slip in classic Simpsons references into a homily just to see if anyone will notice them. Super, super subtle, but just to see if anyone will notice and bring it up to him after the fact. And I think he's only gotten one person to come up to him afterwards. But he enjoys a lot of the style of classic Simpsons, and so he tries to get those references in.
That's really
which
funny.
I thought was funny. Yeah. Yeah, that's a show where it's terrible show, but the writing is is excellent on occasion, like just for cleverness of the jokes or of what they're trying to portray.
I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's a weatherman out of he was in Houston, but now he's in Los Angeles, who would do his weather reports, and he would slip in song lyrics, make the entire weather report just laced with popular music lyrics, and it was just the funniest thing because he would just deliver it straight. And I thought about doing that in a video, but I figured somebody would get noticed and be like, "Oh, you're quoting satanic music." Yeah. Plus, I'd run into copyright. I don't know if you know this, but Kennedy Hall a few years ago did a video where he was reading from the Psalms, and the video got copyright flagged for violating Coolio's copyright to Gangsta's Paradise. Because in that song, he quotes,
"Walk to the valley of the shadow of death."
Oh my gosh!
You should ask Kennedy about it sometime, because I remember watching his video where he's talking about it. It was just the funniest thing, because in a weird, tragic way, Coolio owns the copyright to that psalm. I don't know how that works. The psalm predates Coolio by 2,000 years.
Maybe it's just that wording. Just that translation. Because doesn't the USCCB own the copyright on certain translations of Scripture?
On the
but they don't enforce it against anybody who wants.
Yeah,
they don't enforce it against anybody who wants to do anything in media with it.
That's not entirely true. Because it's not that they don't enforce the copyright. What they do enforce are the fees that are associated with those who want to publish, the hymnals and the missals and the missalettes and that kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
So the USCCB is getting nice royalties.
Mm.
Well, yeah. If you want to publish their terrible NAB translation, then they'll make you pay for it. That's why they won't entertain any complaints about getting rid of that translation, despite how heretical it really is.
Yeah, it's awful.
There's a whole there's you could write a book on how bad the NAB is, and it wouldn't be a small book. It would be one of those where the publisher might ask you to trim down the length of it because of how bad the translation is.
There's a translation, and I'm going to see if I can find it. Let's see.
I'm trying to remember when. I think the Father Knox translation came up on reference in the after show at some point recently, and I'm trying to remember when.
Yeah, that was probably me bringing it up because I like the Knox translation.
Okay, yeah, that must be
not as a serious study, but
for reading, for meditation.
So here I am at the USCCB website, and I'm looking straight at Sirach 26, and there's a line here: "A headstrong wife is regarded as a B." So you know what I mean?
I know which one you're talking about. I posted that to Facebook. People were shocked and thought it was funny at the same time.
Yeah. I actually went to the Douay Rheims. It's not the same. I went to the Vulgate, and I started looking at the Latin, and it's not the same. What the USCCB used were some apocryphal versions that were later added to or kept in some sort of Jewish tradition. And that's what they used. That's what they put in there instead of what was actually canonically approved by the church. And so you're looking at this translation, and I'm going, first of all, this is offensive. Second of all, this isn't even actually what the church had approved as a canonically established part of the Bible. This has nothing to do with anything. Why are they using this at all?
It's
I don't know, but wild. It's absolutely wild. You would have thought that somebody would have brought that to their attention and said, "Hey, maybe we shouldn't have this."
Right.
Yeah, it's like it's a lot of these decisions. It's all well and good to see, to see where things are clearly done in a malicious way. There's plenty of things that have been done in the last 70 years or whatever, where you can see, even whether it's admitted behind the scenes or not. Sometimes it really is admitted behind the scenes, but you can see the nefarious, intentions behind it. But there's also so many other decisions where it's clearly just incompetence.
Yeah,
it's like it's just bad Latin, or people not paying attention or not caring. Like
incompetence, or just incompetence, or is it incompetence on purpose?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is like sometimes sometimes it really seems like there doesn't seem to be any like real purpose to this. It's either just kind of maliciously not caring. It's just just put it out there. Who cares? It's just or it's just people not knowing what to do, like not knowing how to translate the Latin, because their Latin's so bad. Mm-hmm. This is something that John the 23rd did try to remedy at one point before, in the what was it 60? I can't remember what year it was that he put this out, but Veterum Sapientiae, he was like, look, Latin, the state of Latin in the church right now is terrible. We need to return to it. We need to fire any seminary teachers who can't, speak Latin or whatever like that. Like it's a amazing document that's still on the books. It was never abrogated, but no one takes it seriously. It's terrible. And it's a really great document overall.
So I get to spend a bunch of money today. We had to replace our vehicle. I bought a car last year and it was a lemon. So today I get to go pay my, the taxes on the car to the state. So that's going to be fun. And a couple of days ago, the IRS sent me hey, by the way, you didn't give us quite enough money when you pay taxes. We know you gave us enough money to buy a car, basically. But here's some more that you need to give us. So I get to pay that today too. You ever had a day where your wallet screams in agony? This is one of those days.
I just did this week because of my truck. So
seems like we're all having vehicle issues. 2 weeks ago, I was driving down the road in our van. We were on our way to drop our daughter off at ballet practice, and all of a sudden, I think it was one of those ratchet straps in the middle of the road, and it punctured the tire on our 15-passenger van. So now I have to replace a tire. Then on top of that, my wife, just 2 or 3 days later, was driving our daughter to ballet practice, and some lady in the lane next to her decided, you know what? I don't want to be in this go straight lane out of the intersection. I want to turn left in the left-hand lane. So I'm going to just careen right into the person next to me, which happened to be my wife, and take out the front quarter panel of our vehicle. It's just one thing after another. The Mazda that we have, which is our daughter's car, it suddenly decided that it was going to need all sorts of work done on it. So it's just like, well, we had a nice little cushion at the beginning of the month, and now we're scraping and hoping that we can get to the next paycheck. It's pretty awful.
Yep. Yeah, that was I was driving down for an appointment for my truck tires, and halfway there, the engine overheated because the elbow joint on the heater hose blew off, and I had to pull over and get it towed down there. So like what was going to be just a kind of a routine tire switch turned into a several day long ordeal of finding rides, borrowing my fiance's car to get to work, all this kind of just all these just complications that could have just been over in a day if I had just gotten down there. And
you're engaged.
Yes. Oh, was sorry, Michael. I didn't know this was news. Yes, I've been engaged since last October. Yeah, I'm. Joe's mentioned it once or twice, I think, but yes, I'm getting married this October.
Well, congratulations! What day?
Thank you very much. October 11th.
All right, a couple of days after Lepanto Day.
Yes. It's the feast of the in the old calendar. It's the feast of the maternity of Our Lady.
Did you go with the Lord of the Rings theme, or the Narnia theme, or the Star Wars theme? Because that seems to be what people do now, right?
We're trying to go with the Latin theme. We're still waiting on approval from the diocese. But yeah, we're kind of.
I can hear the organ music now, starting with da 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 da.
Yeah.
Don don don.
Don't give them any ideas.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably happened in a bunch of churches.
I'm sure
at this point.
Oh, I mean, any parish with a rapping priest is probably going to be amenable to your themed wedding in a parish.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, probably with themed vestments and everything.
Yeah.
So okay, here's just a random thought because Memorial Day is coming up. What are our thoughts on when secular holidays coincide with religious holidays, or how the how the church should observe, if it should at all, secular anniversaries and holidays like, a national day, a national founding day. In an ideal, world in Christendom, the national feast for a country is the feast of their patron saint or something like that. That's the ideal. But how should the church sort of deal with things like that? Like one thing that we do, because at our parish for Thanksgiving Day, everyone has off. So what we do is we move our mass time. It's always on a Thursday, obviously. So instead of 6 p.m., which is what our normal weekday mass time is, we move the mass time up to 9 a.m. And we have a sung mass, and we sing a Te Deum, which is the hymn of Thanksgiving afterwards. We do the mass of the day, or if it's a ferial day, we do a saint from the Martyrology or whatever, or a fitting votive mass. But we're not, explicitly liturgically doing something like I think the USCCB has like a Thanksgiving mass scheduled always for that day or something. And I think they have a Independence Day themed mass in some way for the 4th of July. What are your thoughts on kind of the best way for the church to approach something like that? Like, is there a good method for it to follow? I think it my personal opinion is that it's good for, as we live in a non-Catholic country, it's good for the church to kind of not try and separate itself from what the country's doing and to come up with a way to kind of Christianize, the celebration that way, like with Thanksgiving Day, as much as possible. But I'm wondering what your guys' thoughts are.
Well, I would start with history and say that if you want to understand how the church should handle certain secular holidays, secularism is a more recent thing. It's not something that was really in existence. However, there were certain cultural things that would happen in local villages or in various regions of the world. And it was a cultural celebration that they would do this or that. And then the church would say, okay, we will sanctify what you are doing. It's not like what the moderns say, oh, we're going to baptize this pagan ceremony and we're going to baptize this pagan practice. No. It's to say that culturally speaking, these people would have a celebration pertaining to a particular day of the year or some national thing that happened or whatever it is. I mean, even battle victories were celebrated. And so culturally, the people would get together and they would celebrate. And the church would say, this is a day of celebration. We'll go ahead and add a holy element to it. We'll sanctify a certain portion of this by saying, okay, you're going to go out and celebrate. That's great. Let's make sure that you go to confession. Let's have mass. And it will be a mass according to the liturgical calendar. And I don't think that the church should bend over backwards to try and, make like a mass of the, of National Independence Day or something like that.
Yeah.
But you could do something if, for instance, like Memorial Day, you could do a mass for the dead. Let's pray for the holy souls in purgatory. Let's pray for those fallen soldiers who fought for our freedoms and fought for the liberty of this country. That would be a way to sanctify the day without secularizing the mass or turning towards a secular understanding of what the church is doing.
Yeah, I think
I tend to agree with virtually all that. I mean, I'm reminded of Thomas Aquinas teaching that patriotism essentially is filial devotion to your country, and it's actually a right word thing.
Yeah.
You don't let it get out of hand. You don't let it turn into what they call jingoism.
Yeah, exactly.
My country, right or wrong, is disordered. But it's I hate my government because it's Masonic. Okay, well, your government happens to run the area where all your neighbors live.
Yeah.
You don't have to like your government to like your country.
Yeah, it's kind of like that's because I know of trad Catholics who like go out of their way to denigrate celebrating Independence Day. Or say, oh, well, yeah, we all wear black on Independence Day because it was a Freemasonic founding of the country type of thing. And I'm like, what's next? Are you gonna? Do you think anyone who has a non-Catholic dad should wear black on their father's birthday in mourning for his birth? Like, it's filial piety that you're supposed to express. Like, it's the birthday of your nation. Celebrate it because you want your nation to convert. You celebrate these things. You're supposed to pray. The church in England used to chant a prayer for the king, the Protestant king, after Mass every Sunday. Like, because he's the leader of your country, and you pray for him and you want him to convert and go to heaven. Like, that's it's this attitude is just, it's such performative, like, oh, I know something about history. George Washington was a Freemason, so therefore, like, I'm going to cast judgment on the entire nation. It's performative, tradism. It's not really a Catholic, point of view.
Well, this is why
it's ridiculous.
A lot of us like to differentiate between being a traditional Catholic and being a trad.
Yeah, exactly.
Being a trad is very performative.
Yeah.
Being a trad is being out of touch with reality and being out of touch with the normal condition of everyday people and looking down your nose at people, even your fellow Catholics, because they might like a Beatles song. Okay. It's like, rein it in there, Buster. You're going to drive people away from everything we're trying to do by being that guy. Yep. The universal rule of don't be that guy applies in most things.
Oh, Anthony, you're such a normie.
You're such a normie cat.
I'm finding being normal is actually healthy.
That's kind of the thing people should be striving for. We should all be trying to be normal Catholics. That should be.
Well,
yeah.
so actually, philosophically speaking,
if you want to
go ahead. It's going to have hobbies.
Philosophically speaking, if you look at the way a chorus works, okay, a chorus means that you're supposed to be singing in harmony with the people around you, not standing out.
Yeah.
And if somebody sings a sour note, you don't then sing a cleaner note louder, because now you're standing out. What you're supposed to do is, maybe help by lending your voice to the individual who's near you, whose voice is maybe a bit sour, but you're not supposed to stand out. You are, in that sense, in the choral sense, meant to be normal, where everybody's voices become one voice. And from a secular, not a secular, but a cultural standpoint, we're kind of called to be the same. So,
yeah, you're supposed to be
priests in a better time were trained. Priests in a better time were trained to understand what's going on in the broader world, including the popular culture, to not be totally alien to, like, if a priest today has never heard the name of Pedro Pascal, there's a problem. Even though that guy is a hack, and his movie should probably be avoided mostly just because they suck. But there's no accounting for taste. But it's okay to have hobbies. It's okay to once in a while, if you watch a ball game, it's okay.
Yeah,
it's okay to play a video game once in a while. It's okay.
Yeah.
Just be discerning in what you're doing.
Yes.
Don't let it rule your life.
Yes.
You ever notice at the church when it talks about gambling, doesn't say if you want to go play the penny slots, it's probably okay once in a while. Right? If you go actually read what the church
even
says,
if it isn't very wise.
Yeah, even if it isn't very wise. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It may not be wise.
Yeah.
Right? It's just like it may not be wise to spend all your time playing are massive multiplayer online role-playing games still a thing?
They are still kind of a thing, yes.
Yeah. WoW died though, pretty much, right? Like that finally
it's dying.
went away,
it's dying,
right?
I think. Yeah.
If you want to spend your time playing that stuff, that's probably okay. It may not be the wisest thing to do for hours and hours and hours of your time.
Yeah.
It may point to some other disorder.
Yeah.
But if you aren't out there, as the kids say, touching grass, there's a problem.
Yeah.
And you gotta find a way to, you will go insane.
Yeah. See, Jacob has a fiance, so I know that he's not playing WoW on the weekends.
I'm not playing WoW on the weekends, but my fiance might be. She's more of a gamer than I am, actually. She's actually more into video games than I am.
If people bristle at the video game thing, just go back 200 years. The equivalent of video games in those days would have been probably checkers or something, right?
Well, I was about to say, speaking of gambling, if you are getting together on a Friday night with some guys and you're playing poker for low stakes, you're technically gambling money, right? But you're just having fun. You're like, okay, let's put a small stake in the game to make it more entertaining. Because there's
the loser has to buy everybody DoorDash or something.
Yeah, exactly. That sort of thing. Not only is there nothing inherently wrong with that, but you're actually building camaraderie. You're having a little competition together, and you're hanging out with people, and that is something that you can get from, like, if you're playing video games with friends or something like that. You are building camaraderie. You're loosening up. There are, these are not things that are inherently, evil, as long as you're being discerning about the content and again how much you're doing it, and
we're not suggesting you go play Leisure Suit Larry in video games in the 80s.
There's a reference.
or what I call crime simulators.
Yeah, exactly.
Crime simulators,
like Grand Theft Auto or something like that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. But you're not gonna go stand before Satan one day because you played Tetris or Mario or something, right? Unless it became an idol in your life, which is not the same thing as the video game. It's you made an idol out of something. If you can make an idol out of gardening. You ever met those people who turn their flower beds into everything their life is about?
Yeah.
They exist.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
People
it's just sort of like
make the weirdest thing into obsessions.
Right. It's sort of like, one of the questions I've always had about, your Sunday day of rest. There are people out there, we've met these psychopaths who pushing a lawnmower around is like the most relaxing thing for them.
Yeah.
I think they need therapy, but they exist. Are they violating the day of rest by doing that? I don't think they are. They're, maybe they put some headphones in and they listen to some, music that relaxes them and lets them, if they're focusing their mind on God while they're cutting their grass and enjoying every second of it like a sociopath, maybe that's fine. They might need intervention, but I don't think that's, the same thing as servile labor.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard different statements on it. I've heard priests say that it's not sinful to go out for a meal on a Sunday. As long as it's at a reasonable time of day when you wouldn't have been preventing someone from attending mass in the morning, because it's the argument is like it's reasonable to, like, if you were at home you would cook for people, so it's not unreasonable to go out and be a guest at an establishment and then reimburse them for the labor that they're giving you that they're doing for you, type of thing. Like it seemed a little legalistic of an argument to me, but it made sense in a way. Like as long as you're not disrupting people's ability to honor the Lord's Day, it's not the end of the world to go out for brunch.
Well, one of the things that I heard from a priest regarding that is that the issue isn't so much the labor itself, but the commerce, and that the day of rest really is about saying, I'm going to relax and allow our Lord to kind of take care of things. Not to say that I can't work on a Sunday because some things are necessary.
Yeah.
Firefighters have to be on call.
Yeah.
Policemen have to be on call.
Yeah, exactly.
So there are certain required forms of work, and they are they're covered for their labors.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there are certain things that are not necessary.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's the unnecessary commerce. You don't have to go shopping on Sunday.
Yeah, exactly.
And you shouldn't.
Yes, and you shouldn't. Although I think there's an argument to be made for, like, if something comes up and there's a necessity that you have to get, like you should be able to go out and buy Band-Aids or something like that. Like there are certain things that you can make exception for, at certain hours of the day or whatever like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or but it's prudence, and the church is discerning and understanding with a lot of these things. But the goal should be to be trying to honor our Lord. That should be the primary thing. So if it's taking away from that, then you need to re-examine it. But that about wraps it up for us for today. It's a wide-ranging discussion.
Yeah, we went from satanic panic to
exactly. Well, it all comes down to media from the 80s in the end. That's pretty much what it always comes back to. But thanks everyone for hanging out with us this week. So Michael, you are hosting next Friday, I believe, right?
That's correct.
Okay, because we're off Thursday as well next week. By the way, for the Ascension in the Buffalo Diocese, at least, it's still a holy day of obligation, which is great. They didn't move it to the Sunday. So the Ascension Thursday on a Sunday, that makes sense, right? Like Epiphany, whatever. And we are off Monday for Memorial Day, so it will be an encore. So you'll have to get your after show fix somewhere else. But we've got some fun guests lined up. Tuesday and Wednesday, Mike Koniger is going to be hosting, and then as mentioned, Michael will be back on Friday. And definitely have some interesting guests. We'll let you guys know more about that next week as we finalize the lineup. Some good stuff coming up. Hope everyone has a great Memorial Day. God bless you all. Thanks, gentlemen.